This is part 4 of a series of videos on how to create a multi-user chat application. So in the first 3 parts, we created a protocol for communicating with the client. So we have commands such as log in, log off. We're able to publish the presence of a user when they log in to other users using online and offline commands. In the last part, which is part 3, we worked on supporting direct messages and group messaging from different users to different users. And up until now, we've been using a telnet to replicate what the client behavior should be. Right? So let me show you how to use the telnet to connect to our server. So we can use telnet localhost, and then the port is 8818. I have 2 connections. So once these are connected, the first thing I have to do is to log in as someone. So in this first telnet session, I'm going to log in as a guest with the password guest, and then on the lower second telnet session, I'm going to log in as Jim with the password Jim. And so once I log in, this first one will get a presence that Jim is online, which that happens. And at the same time, when this Jim gets online, we also get a notification that guest is already online. So here, this is how our presence is working. We're going to use this presence to build our client roster, basically of all the people that are currently available online that you can chat with. And then you can also send messages to a user by just using the command message and then followed by the login and then the message. So you can see that the top part received that message. So what we're going to do in part 4 is to work on the client-side library that is used to facilitate the communication between the client and the server. Okay, so to begin, we're going to work on this chat client module that we created in part 1. Right now it doesn't have anything, so let's create a new class. We're going to create a class called chat client, and this is going to be the interface to the server. Okay, so we're going to create a main class just for a test. The way that we want to use the chat client is to create an instance of this client, and we can then pass it the host, which right now is going to be our local host, and then the port. So let's create this constructor, and then this will be our server port. So we just remember these 2 as the field members. Okay, so once we create an instance of this client, we want to connect. We want to be able to establish a connection to the server. So in order to make a connection to the server, we have to create a socket. And in the socket, okay, so the parameters to a socket is basically going to be the host and then a port. So here, since we're already passing the server name and the server port in the constructor, we're going to use that here. And then here, once so if we have any exceptions, let's make this one return a boolean if it's connect successfully or not. So if any exceptions, we're going to return false. Otherwise, we're going to return true. Okay, and what I want to do is I also want to make this socket a field so we can access it in other methods. Okay, so once we create the socket, we can then access the input stream and output stream to be able to read and write to the server. So here I'm going to say server out as my output stream, and then my server in as my input stream. Okay, so just to okay, so let's test this. So here, if I do that, I can then print out a message. Okay, so now let's run it. I think we should also print out if it's successful. Okay, let's run it again. Okay, and here you go. So it says connect successful. So that's working the way that we expect. And then also, let's see if the server prints out anything, right? All right, so here you see this accepted the connection. One thing that I also want to point out is that we can actually figure out which port this client socket is using. We can do that by printing out the client port, this local port. Okay, so now if we run this chat again, the client port is 60258, and on the server, you can see here, this port is 60258. So this is the client port, and this is going to be the server port. Okay, so that's just a little bit about how we use sockets.